Hello, I'd like to welcome you to Conversations with Dr. Doster. Part of our strategic plan is to incorporate our community engagement. And with community engagement, we're going to have a series of interviews that will be videotaped throughout the school year. And some of our stakeholders are with us today. We have a group of wonderful teachers that have volunteered their time to assist and answer a few questions about a little bit about themselves, about the school district, and some advice for the students. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and we are going to start our interview process. And we hope you enjoy this as we continue with others for our series. So our first question, we'll go ahead and we'll start out. We'll start with you, Ms. Burke. And the question will be, what grade level do you teach? What school do you teach in? And could you please state your name for everyone? May you want to do that first?
Of course. My name is Janet Burke, and I am the gifted teacher, which is the teacher for the ACE program at Serena Hills. And I teach grades K through 5. I teach small math enrichment groups, small reading enrichment groups, and then I also teach a humanities class and an analytical applications class.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we'll go ahead and move down the line.
I'm Dee Manis. I teach 6th grade language arts at Parker Junior High.
I'm Michelle Jaros. I teach 4th grade at Flossmoor Hills.
Hi, I'm Rosalind McWhorter, and I teach 4th grade. I'm starting my 3rd year teaching 4th grade at Heather Hill School.
And I'm Joey Cristofanelli. I teach 4th grade at Western Avenue.
Very good. Well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here. We have so many wonderful teachers in our school district, and you are a sample of the many great ones that we have, so thank you. Second question that I have will be, what is your favorite reason for being a teacher?
I think about this long and hard, and I have to say that I have 2 favorite reasons. Number one is I think this is the best profession for me to continue to be a lifelong learner, and I like to inspire that in my students as well. The other reason is it's really fun for me to teach kids to find their passion and to keep going and going and going.
Excellent.
One of my favorite reasons is the sense of community that we build. Even though we're within the 4 walls of the classroom, it's a sense of community that I build with my parents, my students, and most importantly, my extended family, the peers that I have within my building, and the district. It's so incredibly gratifying to run into a parent a year or 2 years or 4 or 5 years later and to have that parent say that their child's stamina, their work ethic, their sense of pride in their effort has increased as a result of the educational experience that they had in my classroom.
My favorite reason for being a teacher is really simple, is that kids are really fun and they're funny and their minds are so full of creativity, and I love to be a part of that on a daily basis. Coming to work every day really just feels like hanging out with a bunch of friends, definitely developing those close-knit relationships with them and then making them and teaching them to be successful for their future.
I would say my favorite thing about being a teacher is when you get that kid who doesn't like to read and they have that, "Oh, I can't wait to finish reading the story," or "I didn't see that coming." Just the other day I had a kid who said he didn't like to read, but he finished reading the story and he said, "That was so great, I didn't see that." And when you have those moments of when the kids finally realize how great it is to be a good reader and a good writer, and you have that aha moment, that it's a wonderful feeling. You know, lots of times people will say, "Well, why did you become a teacher?" That's a really hard question for me to answer because it's all I've ever wanted to do. You know, I was born with chubby cheeks and freckles and black hair, and I wanted to be a teacher. And it's just that love of seeing that kid get really excited, and to see those reluctant readers finally get the passion for reading, and to see them actually want to continue with that.
Well, I have been teaching over 30 years, so it has changed immensely since I have taught. When I first started teaching, we were put in the classroom, we were given a set of manuals, we opened the book, we started on page 1, and hopefully you made it through the rest of the year. Now, with technology and with the change in the standards, we are more focused on, each grade level has certain standards that we teach, and we have to be focused on those standards, and we have to find ways for children to meet those standards. And one of the ways that they meet those standards is students have to be in charge of their own learning. It needs to be student-centered, engaged, and collaborative work together. So that is the biggest change that I have found, seeing kids working together in groups, coming up with their own answers, and just being guided by the teacher as a facilitator instead of the teacher giving the answers and lecturing everything.
Thank you.
She stole most of my answers. I've been teaching for 28. This is my 28th year, and so many of the things that Janet already said. You know, it was kids caught up with you, or too bad, so sad for them. But now it's looking at their individual growth, looking at where they are, and what are we going to do to help each individual child get there. We didn't do that back in the olden days. The technology, we used to use mimeograph machines, and you'd have purple all over, and we've moved to the technology we have. The standards, the type of testing we do, there's a lot more accountability on us as teachers than there were in the back in the 80s. And I'm aging myself, but that's okay. But it was just, it's more child-centered, and the collaborative working and the standards and giving them more independence. It's not all about us, it's all about them. And even though there have been all these changes, the one thing that hasn't changed is the kids. They still come to us wanting to feel safe. Their parents want to know that the people that they are sending them to love them. The kids still want to, they're just still kids. So even though we've had all those changes, there's still a lot that's still the same.
Very good.
This is my 6th year teaching, and one of the biggest changes that I've seen throughout those years is the incorporation of technology. About 4 years ago, we started a pilot program in which students were a part of a one-to-one technology initiative, and the kids were given iPads. And those iPads were allowed to go home with them and use every day in the classroom for instruction. The kids were so thrilled and so excited that they finally had their own piece of technology. And when I first started, I had, my whole class of 25 huddled around me in front of a big blocked computer screen. So definitely one of the beneficial changes that I've seen throughout my years. Also, the application of real-world situations within learning. I feel that kids now are doing things that they're actually going to use in the real world. For example, last year I had kids take part in making their own play stocks, and they actually watched the stocks on a daily basis and would put money in stocks and watched how they changed on a day-to-day. So.
Thank you.
Well, of course, I agree with my colleagues. The technology has changed by leaps and bounds and continues to change. And Common Core standards have added an extra layer, an extra dimension to that. It changes the way we teach, or as we often say, the way we coach students to learn. We coach them to think more critically, and what is really exciting is to see them appreciate the fact that they can question us, and they can question concepts, and they can question each other, and then feel okay with learning, because there was a time when you wouldn't dare question the teacher. You made a mistake. Now, a mistake is a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity for all of us to explore and investigate and discover, and for them to feel incredibly proud about the progress that they've made.
Good, thank you.
So this question was a little difficult for me. This is only my 4th year teaching. So I want to go back before that to college. I had a very interesting college experience because I went through my freshman year, learned the old Illinois learning standards, and then everything was ripped out from underneath us when we started sophomore year, and we transitioned to the Common Core. So I'm very happy with that shift, obviously. I like the content of the Common Core much better than those old standards that I saw my freshman year of college. But beyond that, I was very fortunate to start here in Flossmoor, and I always had technology around me, so I will say that I don't know what it's like to teach from a textbook, to be in front of the room, but I can vouch and say that that's how I was taught, and I did not like it very much. I would have preferred to have my own learning path, and I even told some of my teachers that and got in trouble for it. I did. But like I said, I'm very fortunate to have started here, and I will never know what it's like to not teach without an iPad and have all of these resources available to me, and I feel fortunate for that.
Good. Everyone is doing a great job. I have 2 final questions left. All right, and this next question is, what are you doing to make students successful?
So I think that the first way I would answer that is exactly what we see when we see our Flossmore logo. We're creating 21st century learners today to be those leaders tomorrow. And the way that I do that is I use the 4 C's that we're all very aware of. We're teaching kids to collaborate and work together. We're teaching kids to critically think and to persevere in that problem solving. We're teaching kids to create things. What can you make to show us that you've learned something from me today? And finally, we're teaching them to communicate with us, with each other, with people that they're eventually going to work with. I had a really good conversation with my class today, actually, that I just quickly want to talk about, and it goes with that communication piece. I had a student ask me to move their seat because they felt like they couldn't sit next to the person, and they came to me about a half an hour later and changed their mind and said, you know, this is really my job to try to get along with this person, because Mr. Crispinelli, you keep saying over and over again that you don't get to work with the people that you choose, you have to work with who's there, and you have to learn to get along with others, and it was an excellent experience for me today.
I agree with you, Joey, about the 4 C's, and I feel like one of the most important things, and this is something I always start the school year with, is building trust. Because if they don't feel like this is a safe and trustworthy environment in our classroom, then nothing else that I say, nothing else that I do has any credibility. And we have a code word in our classroom. Students can always say, may I have a conference with you? And as soon as they say the word conference, immediately it invokes confidentiality, privacy, whatever is said is only going to be repeated if the student repeats it. And they use it so well, so effectively, and a student may come to me and say, I'd like my seat moved, and they lay out the reasons, and then they will problem solve and say things like, well, you know what, I've noticed that he or she really struggles with math. Maybe that's why they're talking so much. Maybe that's why they need help. So trust building is a huge issue for me, and I find that the learning sort of overflows from a byproduct.
One of the things that in 4th grade we're doing at Flossmore Hills to make our students more successful is we're holding them accountable for their own data. I feel like previously students would just receive a grade on a test and they had no idea what that meant. Currently we're using pre and post assessments to help kids set goals and track how they've done throughout the entire school year. For example, yesterday in my classroom we all sat together and students had their own individual data binder, and we sat and we looked at our pre-test and our post-test, and they were finally getting it, that the purpose of the pre-test is to assess our learning first, and then the post-test, our score is going to go up after we've been taught different things. And what's one of the things that I think is really helping kids become accountable for their own learning and to understand the meaning of assessment, really, because it's something that's going to follow them for the rest of their lives. And also goal setting. We take the assessments and then we help the kids set goals that are based on the learning standards, and then they work towards achieving those goals, and when they do, we celebrate. And that's something that they definitely enjoy, and I think that they really take great pride in.
Write and understand what's going on and to communicate their ideas. And getting organized. That it's a key. No matter what job you have to have a task, you have to know what your path is to do that. And finally, to go piggyback on, to just be a good person, a person of character, a person of honesty and integrity, because not everybody's going to be an A student, not everybody's going to get the top skill, but if you have integrity, if you are hardworking, you are going to be a success no matter what you do.
Some great advice. I'm ready for the next one.
One of the pieces of advice that I like to give my students is always to be yourself. The kids that I've seen within these past 6 years have had the most creative minds, and sometimes no idea is a dumb idea, and to let them be themselves within their learning and within their ideas. Recently we did a lot of exploration with developing something new, and these amazing ideas that these kids came up with really showed that they were allowing themselves to be pulled true within their learning. So.
Of course, character is extremely important. Unfortunately, I didn't phrase it that way in my classroom. I phrased it this way. When you enter this room, conduct yourselves as if your parents are sitting in the back of the classroom at all times. Make good choices. So that cuts down on a lot of confusion about what's good character and what's not. And then secondly, I tell them, be curious. Be curious about any and everything. If it's something that you wonder about, it's good to wonder. It's good to ask questions. And last of all, set goals early and often. And when you make those goals, set some new goals and talk to other people who have a life that you like to model yourself after, and be curious about their life and ask them, how did you do that? How did you get there? I just want all of our students in the school district, because I have a vested interest. My kids went to school here, kindergarten through 8th grade, and then went on to HF. So I have to say I'm doubly vested by being a community member, a resident, and a teacher. And I consider it an honor to be part of this group. This is an illustrious group of teachers. And as a career changer to education, I have to say it's good to see the lens from both sides. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
So my advice comes straight from a former teacher of mine who I call my favorite. She, as well as I do now, had the word persevere in front of the room. And that was all she ever asked us to do. She told us that mistakes were proof that we're trying, and that if we didn't make them, that we were never going to find a better solution. And that has always stuck with me, and that drives every day that I'm now standing in front of the room, in front of my students. Beyond that, just piggybacking off the character, be kind to yourself and others, find your passion, and commit to excellence.
Well, thank you. This concludes our interview session. All of you did a great job, so thank you so much for that. And I would like to thank you for viewing, and we look forward to seeing you shortly.